Hey, it's September 13th, 7:58. I'm just going to read. I just have been writing, you know, and writing page after page after page. And I'm watching the market crashing today, and I'm watching as the things get more and more unstable. My prediction is we're going to go to the Great Reset, and Biden's going to retire, be put into retirement. Kamala Harris is going to swing into office, and behind her is going to be Obama calling the shots, and she'll be practiced. And that's where she's. Where has she been all this time? I think she's in training, as far as I can tell. Anyway, as usual, I'm delusional. So pay no attention. See what happens, as everybody says. So this is something I'm writing. What America is, or Flunkie See, Flunkie Do. Outside of the law of enriching oneself and keeping in total conformity to the herd's social values is nothingness. All sense of self and self-worth is measured against whatever one's position is in a relationship to the people above and below on the social ladder, to the heaven of popularity. That's where we're all headed in America. The only thing that matters is how popular you are. If you're unpopular, be banished from our sight. Anybody unpopular is deeply, deeply suspicious in my book. The individual's life is sacrificed to the god of pop. Everybody bow, 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 bow before Stephen King. Whoever the most popular novelist is the greatest. I don't know. Let's look on the New York Times bestseller chart to see, or Oprah's book club. Outside of popular entertainment and the individual's relationship to it, there is no reality. It's all encompassing. If you're not in touch with the social beat, that's what it was being called. I don't know what it's called now. I only plug into it every once in a while since I have to be in the arts. I'll plug in at any point along, and the lingo has changed. So maybe if it's not the social beat now, it's the same old beat, the beatniks. I'm beat. I'm really beaten down. But I can tell what the beat is. It's the warpath. They're beating the war drums. I can hear the war drums. Civil war is coming. I've said this for the better part of 2 years. It's going on 2.5 years now, and it keeps coming, and oh, there's not going to be a civil war. Oh, you're crazy. Oh, what are you talking about? Well, that isn't a civil war. What, they're burning buildings and stuff? It's not a civil war. And here's Joe Biden looking like Benito Mussolini, calling this internal menace that we have to exterminate at all costs because it's a threat to our democracy. Wake up! It's coming. It's coming. And this is the background for it. It's that people's lives revolve around lifestyle. They don't have lives. The popular expression, get a life. They don't always get a lifestyle. Nobody knows what a life is because there's only one life. The way, the truth, and the life. There's only one light in the darkness. That's all I have to say, really, is, I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. I have been for a long time. I've looked around for somebody sane, in churches that aren't living in this. It's the same false reality of pop culture. In any church I go into, they get their bongo drums or electric guitars. It's like it's a competent version. Some of it's better than, say, oh, I like Tom Petty. Some of it's in my hearing, is just as good as Tom Petty. I don't even like Tom Petty. Do I have to? I never even liked Bob Dylan. I like Jimi Hendrix and not Bob Dylan. I like the Jimi Hendrix version of All Along the Watchtower. You can, take the Bob Dylan stuff. Where the greatest pop song of all time is "Everybody Must Get Stoned" with Al Cooper, who'd never played organ before. Like musically, I don't know. You tell me. Maybe I didn't have enough LSD. I thought I had. I didn't even like the Grateful Dead. To call me stupid, but I'll listen to Thelonious Monk or someone. It's just a matter of taste, and I don't have any taste, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't. None of it matters. God matters. Truth matters. Jesus matters. God matters, and we don't matter. We don't matter at all. We're just vapor. We're just dust. If one wants to believe in God or the gods, if Hinduism or Catholicism are chosen with their multiplicity of saints, tattoo symbols, all the meaning is both defined and derived from the mass media, popular sources, and membership in societies, churches, clubs, yacht clubs, country clubs, baseball teams, soccer moms, I don't know, rugby hooligans, rock and roll, Hells Angels outings. I don't know. I don't have any identification with any of Americana. I'm not. It could be that I'm not a patriot. That must be it. I see an American flag. I'm pretty much neutral. Maybe that's because I had a Canadian mother and an American father. I don't know. Who knows? I think it more has to do with the fact that I'm like Hans Christian Andersen, the Emperor's New Clothes guy who had Asperger's syndrome, or Lewis Carroll, Through the Looking Glass, the Alice in Wonderland. I see I see a white door and I want to paint it black. No, I don't want to paint it black. I don't want to paint it white like Kazimir Malevich and be a white supremacist, suprematism. It was called suprematism. The Bolshevik Kazimir Malevich is white on white squares. Then Rauschenberg did his white on white, and Ryman did his white on white. I mean, there's any number of white on white paintings. How many more Robert Ryman paintings were all white? Oh, the whiteness of white. Robert Irwin, the disappearing act of modern art. It's gone. Bye. Good riddance. Hit a subscription and like button and make a donation or not. The individual is automatically an ascended spiritual master or a hard-nosed atheist, whatever the choice selected. By association, it's osmotic. If you get your Christopher Hitchens button or hit your Sadhguru button or hit your Eckhart Tolle or hit your Kenneth Copeland or hit your Billy Graham or what, as long as you're part of a mass movement, you're okay because millions of other people believe the same thing. Through the magical process, the choice of a Sadhguru or Christopher Hitchens, look, I'm psychic, I thought that's not the next line was, or Obama or Trump, confers both deep knowledge of the eternal mysteries or lack thereof, resident in these material incarnations of both spiritual and worldly wisdom handed down to them through the ages by whatever university gave them their PhD and their knowledge system of choice. There you go, that's the Wizard of Oz, the old theosophist L. Frank Baum talking. I'm not a theosophist. The idea that any individual without a long list of credentials and social achievements, and most importantly, a mass media following, might possess any kind of knowledge at all, much less spiritual wisdom, is today in the postmodern West, with its incandescent cultural splendor, as ridiculous a notion as the idea that hundreds of demons might be driven into a herd of nearby pigs who then rush pell-mell off a cliff to their deaths, drowning in the sea below. And this at the request of those demons themselves, all residing within a single human being. But it heard such a ridiculous thing. That sounds like crazy people talking. They don't know anything about science. There are no such things. There's just neural links and rockets to Mars and UFOs and stuff like that. Not there's poltergeists. I mean, there's haunted houses. There's ancient mysteries. But Jesus Christ, was a crazy person. All that Bible stuff, just stay away from it. Whatever you do, your third eye will never open, and the magic Kundalini serpent will never blow your mind, or the Illuminati pyramid, eye in the pyramid, or you won't be advised about spiritual reality by Billie Eilish or Lady Gaga. So you'll be really out of luck if you start looking at that Bible, folks. Popular thinking in its infinite wisdom, along with the tutelage by the eternal masters of pop wisdom, from Joe Rogan and Howard Stern, with their deep knowledge of what's funny and eternally interesting, to Oprah and the members of The View, with their unlimited political insight and wisdom, to Eckhart Tolle and Sadhguru, with their mastery of Eastern mystical traditions, to the late lamentable Christopher Hitchens and Bertrand Russell, with their certainties that God doesn't exist, despite the logical fallacy of believing a human being can have any knowledge whatsoever of things beyond what a human being is capable of having knowledge of, along with their having no knowledge of it. I mean, even Stephen Hawking doesn't know what it's all about. So how would Bertrand Russell know that there's nobody there? I mean, Stephen Hawking is an atheist, as far as I can tell. And yet, what does he know about who created the universe or how it was created? Is it the Big Bang, or there's black holes, or there's we're going to blow ourselves up. He's worried about AI. I'm worried about AI too. Or they just, so he doesn't seem to have much faith in scientists not to blow up the planet with a large hadron collider. And what's he worried about, since there's no God? And he's now, I don't know, since there's no God, I guess nothing happened after he died, that he just doesn't exist. There's no consciousness beyond the material form. I'm not arguing. I'm just trying to say I can't make sense of atheistic belief. I can't make any more sense than I can make of being reincarnated as butterfly. The scream of the butterfly. Is it Jim Morrison line? What's the scream of a butterfly? Is that like that sound of one hand clapping? It only stands to reason. Were atheists like Bertrand Russell, anybody heard of him? Christopher Hitchens, much more popular, like Jesus and John Lennon. And their illustrious descendants down the ladder of hitting like buttons and subscribing to atheist forums, to possess reason themselves. I wish I could get on an atheist forum. I'm sure that's a real great use of your time. Argue about the non-existence of God with a lot of other people who don't believe in God. Why waste your time talking about him? There's a sense of superior. I think atheists have a sense of superiority, really, that they're superior to God. That they're superior to people who believe in God is really what it comes down to. There's a kind of bizarre egomania. Because really being a Christian is all about humility. You really don't, if you don't want to believe in God, who am I to say differently? But it's a non-starter. Or if you do believe in God and you're going to a church, what do you believe? That would be an interesting conversation that I might have. Besides saying, the pastor, the pastor. No, what do you believe? The pastor, you got to meet the pastor. You got to come. The pastor. He was a lawyer. He always had a degree from Fuller University, or 5 degrees. He's written 15 books. He's got a huge following. You got to come. We've got a good service going on. That goes for the Saffron Robe crowd. I'm skeptical about human knowledge. Let's put it that way. I think knowledge has to come directly from God, or it's not going to come at all. If you don't have a direct relationship with God through the Son, Jesus Christ, then that's the only way I've achieved. I don't have any knowledge myself. All I have comes from God to me, and I write it down, or I follow it, or I pass it on, or I pass it along like I'm passing it along now. Anyway, it can also be said with the application of basic logic that just because millions of people practicing the teachings of some self-styled spiritual master as if he's God incarnate on earth might simply have him display one of the miracles recorded in the New Testament as having been done by Jesus Christ in front of hundreds of thousands of witnesses over his 3-year ministry on earth. I really think that it might be considered that he had so many followers to begin with because he was actually doing something more than sitting on his ass like the Buddha, because he was, let's put it this way. Okay, here's the Buddha sitting on his butt and everything, and then he gets assassinated or shot in the head or whatever, pulled before the court and tortured, and then how many followers would there be of Buddha? They say, I'm not going to go down that road. Why would you get yourself killed that way. So here's Jesus. He has all these followers. This happens to him. He gets himself killed. He's crucified. Why is anybody following him after that? If he didn't resurrect, why are so many people being martyred, tortured, eviscerated, walking around for miles, being persecuted, thrown to the lions, and all this, if they didn't have some communication with an actual deity who gave them the strength to withstand all of that torture? I mean, I don't know how it would be possible under conditions where you're being tortured to death, when all you have to say is, okay, maybe I got it wrong. I don't, miracles, that look good to me, but I could have been wrong, and then you're free to go. So instead, and this religion grows and takes over the whole world over time. So people are having, call it a placebo experience. Well, if they were having a placebo experience, there's people like Richard Wurmbrand is tortured for 14 years in the most excruciating ways under the communists. Tortured for Christ, it's called. Doesn't give up his faith and still has his faith and testifies about his experience and writes books about how Karl Marx was a Satanist. Factual book. So he has something to say when he comes out that's really important, that a lot of people who are Marxist might do some research about, that Karl Marx was a Satanist. He's a follower of Satan. He writes about it. He had been raised Jewish, and he changed. Who knows why, who knows where, but all of a sudden, and the stuff is most vile stuff. If you read about, if you want to read a racist, try some Karl Marx. if you want to read some contempt for working people and the working class, try some Karl Marx. I mean, really read some of the guy's letters. Not that they're releasing them from, but the ones that are released are good enough. And the ones, which is where Wurmbrand did his research, or when there's another book. Wurmbrand wrote 2 books, and another author, The Devil and Karl Marx, I forget what his name is. But the millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people killed under the Russians should be enough to say that this is not a utopia that's coming anytime soon. Just maybe rethink it. That's all I'm suggesting. Investigate it a little bit. And look at the other possibility that maybe Jesus is God, the Son of God, and the Holy Spirit is a person like Jesus Christ and like God himself. And that's who you communicate with, and that's who communicates to you. It's not as far-fetched as Monty Python, with their idiotic humor would have you believe, any more than, Jesus crucified in Life of Brian is a joke, or particularly funny if you actually believe in God, Christian God. So just one miracle by any of these popular Eastern and Western masters, like an Alan Watts or Allen Ginsberg, or any of these realized, the Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan's still around. He's a realized master. Why? When's he going to walk on water or do anything? A consistent viewpoint from one album to the next, maybe. Like he's a born again Christian, then he's a Zionist, and then he's a pro Joey Gallo, I don't know what, John Wesley Hardin, pro Billy the Kid, Outlaw, pro Paul Verlaine and Arthur Rimbaud, and this stuff is confusing to me as a belief system. The 60s LSD counterculture. I don't believe in it as enlightenment. I don't believe there was any enlightenment, that John Lennon was enlightened, or that Yoko, or that Paul McCartney, or that, I don't know, Bruce Springsteen, Led Zeppelin. They were Satanists, Masons, let's call them. I don't know if Satan is a dirty word. Occultist, tarot card readers, witches and warlocks, and pagans. They're pagans. Okay? It's real simple. You divide the Christians here and the pagans there. Dionysus, Pan, fertility, Apollo, the law, in Greek mythology, the Roman mythology, these deities. That's polytheism. And then there's monotheism. And then there's the Judaic God, and then there's the Judeo-Christian God. So I'm in the Judeo-Christian God. So if the Pope wants to worship Baphomet and Lady Gaga and global warming and Pachamama, the fertility goddess, and Karl Marx, and be aligned with the Chinese communists who, I don't know, they're human rights violations, never heard of it. I consider that Antichrist. So it's a different belief system. There's lots of different Christians, and I'm one of these very small group myself, and that's what I'm suggesting people examine, can take into consideration that it might be true, that it might be that there might be a real Jesus Christ who's accessible outside of the, as Van Gogh called them, the whitewashed sepulchres of these churches. That was in the 19th century. Hasn't changed one little bit. Is it too much to ask of God incarnate in the flesh, of these all wise and connected to the Lord, priests, pastors, and gurus, not to mention the incredible blessing of thousands of prophets sent by God to enlighten mankind, to do a miracle or two? I mean, I know we've got the Jim Joneses who do them, and I know we have the Hillsong, everybody's epileptic fits on the floor. But I'm somewhat skeptical of Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh and Chogyam Rinpoche, however you pronounce, the Pima Children group, or the contemplative prayer Christianity, or the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Grateful Dead variety. I'm somewhat skeptical that they are spiritually centered on anything other than pleasure, the pleasure dome. I'm getting on 27 minutes. The last century was given various names by various poets and literary geniuses, the age of anxiety, and so on. I might as well exercise my own right as a know-nothing literary crackpot, which I am, to name the 21st century the age of madness. In my humble opinion, the 21st century is a continuation of the previous age of madness that began in the late 19th century. It's coincident with the so-called art movement called Modernism, which was never a movement in the first place. This should be obvious to anyone claiming to follow any spiritual belief system. Be here now, translated, means that there is no movement in time or space. Say you're a Buddhist, for example. Say you're a Christian, for example. There's no such thing as progress. Say you're a Nietzschean, for example, with the myth of the eternal return, or say you're Ecclesiastes, for example. So all these progress and this movement and the evolution of man towards ever higher forms of, I'm a skeptic, and I'm a skeptic about modern art. We've evolved from, I don't know, the Sistine Chapel, Rembrandt's Night Watch, I don't know, Caspar David Friedrich, Albert Bierstadt, Keith Haring, and poo-poo paintings, graffiti paintings, poo. Winnie the Pooh, that comes into my mind because Karen Finlay gets an NEA grant for sticking hams up her ass. That's, excuse me if I've offended anybody, but this is the Village Voice. The year I got to New York, whatever that was, the early 80s, to find out what it was really like in where the center of it all was happening. I'd been in Chicago where, it's just a pale imitation of New York City. So I had to go see where the action really was, where the real art was being made. And there's Karen sticking. I didn't get to see the performance, but I guess it was a rave review in the Village Voice. Like everything of that nature is raved about because that's the magazine founded by Norman Mailer, after all. Another savant, supporter of graffiti and everything else. The sphincter muscle, the sphincter cycle, the cremaster's cycle. It's called the cremaster muscle is your sphincter muscle. Matthew Barney, where Norman has a acting. I never saw it. I never, Well, I'm not so inclined to see people lubed up with Vaseline, sliding down poles with wearing devil horns, of all things, or some devil masquerade. Or did they get lubed up and slide down the Guggenheim spiral down to the bottom of the barrel? I'm like a traditionalist, and I don't make art anymore. I gave up. I quit the profession. I just have a bunch of old crap sitting around the studio that I pull out every once in a while and play games with for amusement's sake. Only if I'm inspired, though. If I'm not inspired, which I haven't been for quite a while, because I'm too busy watching. Why, you ask? I'm glad you asked the question, because I'm too busy watching the entire culture collapse in a heap with people glued to Billie Eilish and Keith Richards. I was posting on Instagram where some, people were just making their little article, and all of a sudden it's swamped with sex mania. You know, it's like you're in the brothel of the Jeffrey Epstein world, which I've done. I keep trying to avoid. Where am I going to go? First, I went to comics. I was in the fine art business, and then I say, "Oh, I go into comics. Those seem to be. There's no real high stakes there." Within, I don't know, a year, all of a sudden Hollywood's there, and Robert Crumb is getting his shows in the Pompidou Center with all this other subprime time. Uh, this must be. I don't know who it is. Santa Claus. Let's see. Modernism, in terms of human reality, is no more than the announcement that whatever form of individual madness, the more dissociated from human and spiritual reality, the better, forms the basis of a new reality, heretofore undiscovered by any other human society since the dawn of civilization. It's all new. When Rambo came out with his derangement of the senses, and Baudelaire and his derangement of the senses, and Edgar Allan Poe and his derangement of the senses, and necrophilia and obsession with death and child brides and all this stuff, never heard of it before. Certainly not in Babylon or ancient Phoenicia or any Persia. And that kind of stuff just was brand new when the sadomasochistic relationship between Verlaine and Rambo, fueled by, I don't know, what was it, opium, absinthe, crack cocaine. Oh, that came later, I forget, with Patti Smith and Mr. Bullwhip in the ass. And, it's repetition, the big lie, you repeat it over and over. It's always new. Rambo is new, and then Jim Morrison doing Rambo is new, and then Antonin Artaud in the Theater of Cruelty and peyote rituals with Artaud in Mexico with the Tarahumara Indians. That's new. And then Burroughs and Ginsberg down with their ayahuasca, yage, whatever, all brand new hallucinogens never been used before, creating all new experiences of enlightenment and enlightenment of mankind inside a bullet in the brain of your wife, or a penknife with not Arthur Miller. He's a whole nother story. Norman Mailer stabbing his wife, misses her heart by this much. He gets a book award for that. It's a somewhat decadent culture, and modernism begins in decadence, and it proceeds further and further downwards into hellish non-connection. It's a thrill ride for a 5-year-old, I guess, if you let them see hardcore porn and then have them decide what sex they're going to be. That's freedom, isn't it, for a 5-year-old? I think the left, not that I'm prone to moralizing, but there's a certain point at which, the society goes into Caligula. Seems like he's has a sound mind compared to at least, he's not wearing a VR helmet. All the pleasures in the world. Naturally, what other form than the imitation and repetition of previous pagan civilizations by Picasso, Gauguin, and other noble savage primitives, following them right down to the latest crop of graduating master's degrees, masturbators, art historians, and artists from top Western universities, with the always fresh and groundbreaking latest neo-Nazi expressionism, primitive primal scream. Where's the Nazi reference come in? It's nationalism and socialism and Marxism. It's all rolled into one world religion. You can say it's Nazism. You can just as well. You can call Trump's a fascist dictator, but Biden isn't a fascist dictator when he is running a police state. I don't know that these labels are meaningless at this point. Language has lost all meaning, just as Orwell as before that, Huxley or what have you have informed us, or how about Latremont or Breton? So we've evolved all the way from the cave drawings through the Renaissance and the Baroque and the Romance to the cave drawings of Picasso. I guess it's just me, but I view Picasso and Matisse, and the entirety of modern art that their work derives from as a dead end, beating a dead horse, like Nietzsche, right? When Nietzsche went, that was about it for the, for me. Like, you want to have the birth of tragedy, and you write the Antichrist and why I am so great, and give yourself syphilis to prove the power of the triumph of the will to power, and the Ubermensch, and you end up, in a going mad when you see a horse being beaten, spending your life beating a dead horse. That's where it all ends up. There's another path that you can go on, but in the long run, you're on the wrong one if you're on the broad one, with all the broads and the Brodskys, the Harold Brodskys or the Joseph Brodskys. Just as so-called religion and spiritual belief are moving in reverse from the late 1940s, when the traditional Christian writer A.W. Tozer noticed it in the Christian religions proliferating in mass rally madness, no different in form than the Nuremberg rallies in Germany in the late 30s. A mere 10 years for the madness infecting German citizens under the spell of Nazism, or the Italians under the spell of the same political fanaticism. Nationalism, of course, is the lowest common denominator, and nation above God is not a Judeo-Christian belief, it's a pagan belief. The king or ruler is God, be that Nimrod, Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump, or Joe Biden. A.W. Tozer, I really recommend anybody that's interested in the traditional Christianity to pick up any book by A.W. Tozer, Knowledge of the Holy, Pursuit of God. In the Pursuit of God, It was published in 1948. So this is only a few years after the end of Hitler and the end of the Cold War, that Tozer, 3 years after the war ended, after Victory Day, V-Day, wrote this. And it's more prescient than Huxley or Orwell. Every age has its own characteristics. Right now, we are in an age of religious complexity. The simplicity which is in Christ is rarely found among us. In its stead are programs, methods, organizations, and a world of nervous activities which occupy time and attention but can never satisfy the longing of the heart. The shallowness of our inner experience is shallower and shallower. The hollowness of our worship. Note the reference to the T.S. Eliot poem, The Hollow Man. Tozer's immensely literate. There's, this notion that Christians are stupid. Try reading somebody like Derek Prince, who was a scholar, a philosopher, a metaphysician who studied with Ludwig Wittgenstein, was his teacher when he was Oxford, Cambridge, whichever university he was at Wittgenstein. Extraordinary, highly educated, high IQ, and top of the British education system back then in the 20s. So to think that Christians are stupid is about, yeah, the ones flopping around on the floor and the ones dancing around, the Trump victory, they're stupid. That doesn't mean Christianity is stupid. I mean, it built the Western civilization up through the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and right up until we got, savagery. Excuse me. The shallowness of our inner experience, the hollowness of our worship, that servile imitation of the world, which marks our promotional methods, modern advertising, all testify that we, and he's talking about America, in this day know God only imperfectly, and the peace of God scarcely at all. I'm just going to read the paragraph again, and then I'm going to pick it up later on. Every age has its own characteristics. Right now, we are in an age of religious complexity. The simplicity which is in Christ is rarely found among us. In its stead are programs, methods, organizations, and a world of nervous activities which occupy time and attention, but can never satisfy the longing of the heart. The shallowness of our inner experience, the hollowness of our worship, and that servile imitation of the world which marks our promotional methods, all testify that we in this day know God only imperfectly, and the peace of God scarcely at all. And I think we're gonna get to know Him over the next, as this tribulation period is hitting America, which has never been hit before since 1860s, and the Civil War. We've had our unrest, we've had our labor strife, we've had our Great Depression, we've had our riots in the 60s, but nothing like a full-scale totalitarian state like Europe experienced. The Hitler and the Mussolinis and the police state and the police dogs and the armies of the night that Norman Mailer ridiculously called, this little Pentagon. They wanted, right, to cause as much destruction and mayhem, but fortunately the then the reason prevailed. Reasonableness prevailed in whatever form. But the prosperity that led to this kind of godlike narcissism that boomer generation had, led by the megalomaniac egos of people like Vidal and Mailer and Chomsky and Buckley and matching Kissinger and Nixon, the world domination project has run up against the creator of the universe. So God bless all the ships at sea. May God protect everybody. I hope that there's a ray of light, that a little bit of light that might come out of any of the words that I say, that might turn people towards that direct relationship that you're going to get from reading nothing else except the Word of God and believing in the Word of God and letting it speak to you without relying on particularly the latter 20th century self-help psychological BS that you see in Barnes and Noble. If you go into the bookstore and you see the Max Lucado and Joyce Myers, I don't even know who they are. I just call it the Oprah Winfreyization of Christianity. To go back into the 40s and prior to that to Leonard Ravenhill, David Wilkerson, A.W. Tozer, and back further to Charles Spurgeon, and back to Jonathan Edwards, and back to the old-time religion. I'll do part 2 tomorrow night.